sad. Here you have someone pretending to be a tough guy turn out to be just a second banana for Joy Behar, the poster child for Trump derangement. Sadly, Bob is now just another gibbering, enfeebled ninny, surrounded by inept relatives as he frets about how Trump's in power and he's not. See, Trump's rise coincides with De Niro's decline. And the person who knows it most is De Niro. He's a fine example of how not to turn loss into bitterness. There are plenty of people who don't like Trump, but don't let it warp their minds or their ability to speak aloud among grown-ups or The View. But the Schiffs and De Niros of the world are emotionally damaged by politics to a point where they can't even assess their own emotions.
When Fox News' fiery and fearless Greg Gutfeld went head-to-head with Hollywood's grumpiest legend, Robert De Niro, no one expected the verbal fireworks that followed. What started as a clash of opinions quickly turned into a full-blown roast session that made even the angriest bulls seem calm and peaceful. De Niro tried to flex his usual tough guy attitude, because let's be honest, that's his only move. But Gutfeld wasn't having it. He came in swinging with razor-sharp sarcasm, unapologetic sass, and a punchline so brutal, it left De Niro completely speechless. And the chaos didn't stop there. A famous actress got dragged into the mess too, thanks to one late-night segment that hit harder than anyone saw coming. Buckle up, because this unexpected showdown might just be the most savage thing you'll see this year. Definitely worthy of an Oscar for Best Verbal Knockout.
Last night, an elderly, confused man went missing in New York. Luckily, a band of self-satisfied elitists found him babbling on the street, threw some pants on him, gave him a stage.
Oh my God.
I'm going to say one thing. Trump.
Once upon a time, in the faded glow of old Oscars and long-gone glory, Robert De Niro suddenly decided he wasn't just an actor anymore. Nope. He crowned himself the grand guru of moral wisdom, political truth, and pure Hollywood outrage. Because obviously, when the nation's facing real problems, what we all desperately need is an 80-year-old movie legend shouting from his luxury Manhattan penthouse, lecturing the world on how we're all living wrong.
Robert De Niro graced the knitting circle in hell known as The View, where he tried to link random thoughts into a sentence. Joy was there to wind him up, since he's played some of the most unredeemable characters.
You have played some of the most really unredeemable characters. Travis Bickle. Travis Bickle was a psychopathic taxi driver. Jake LaMotta, who used to beat his wife, and he was in The Raging Bull. Is Trump worse than they are?
To me.
Enter Greg Gutfeld, the guy who looks like he scrolls Reddit just to start arguments for fun. And yet, somehow, defying all logic and expectations, he pulled off the impossible. A high-definition, sarcasm-fueled takedown of Hollywood's loudest moral preacher. No shouting, no screaming, just pure, razor-sharp wit, the kind so dry it could turn a rainforest into a desert.
Being an actor is tough. For how does one handle real life without a script? Not equipped to think analytically, you're left powerless when observing your own predictions about life turn out wrong. It's not supposed to be this way, De Niro thinks. Only the cool guys get to win. Sorry, Bob. That's only in the movies, but at least you'll always have...
De Niro was once a cultural powerhouse, the intense guy you watched in mob movies while nervously glancing over your shoulder. Now, he's the uninvited guest at political rallies, wearing a permanent scowl that screams, "I just sucked on a lemon, and also democracy is doomed." He's turned gloom into performance art. But lately, he's been thinking so hard and fuming so often, it's starting to look less like passion and more like a full-time medical condition.
It kills me. Talk about persuasive. Really, I was on the fence about Trump, but then I decided to really listen to one of the great generational leaders of American pop culture. And the clenched fists at the end, that really drove it home. It looked like he was pressing a 2-pound weight in a Jenny Craig commercial.
Oh my God.
Look at it again. It's so cute. It's like he found out the restaurant serves Jell-O, or that he won a $10 scratch-off, or he scored a cameo in Jersey Shore, or he had his first number.
Gutfeld didn't need a grand stage or a dramatic script. Just a mic, a spotlight, and a little common sense. And when he aimed that spotlight at De Niro, the so-called Hollywood legend didn't exactly shine. He sizzled under the heat. Because when you strip away all the angry celebrity energy, you don't find a man of the people, you find a millionaire actor yelling at average Americans like they paid for front row seats to his unsolicited TED Talk. While De Niro wandered around playing his latest role, America's most offended grandpa, Gutfeld was busy taking mental notes. Not because he needed acting tips, but because he was observing a rare Hollywood creature, the accidentally hilarious activist. This species thrives on award shows, screams the loudest during elections, and survives solely on a diet of ego and applause. And De Niro, he's perfected the art of condescending from a golden podium, convinced every word he says is history in the making, while the audience just wants the music to start playing him off. But this time, someone didn't just listen. Someone raised an eyebrow from the back of the room, and that someone was Greg Gutfeld. No shouting, no drama, just pure, surgical sarcasm and the kind of eye rolls that hit harder than applause ever could.
Poor Bob. You know, he's like a star whose girlfriend dumps him for a bigger star who's in the White House while you're in Dirty Grandpa. Oh, man. So now the resistance is reduced to applauding tantrums. Who knew De Niro's lasting role would be irrelevant gas bag, pleasing irrelevant peers? And he's doing this as Trump organizes a summit. Not a war, a summit. And you got to wonder, if it were President Hillary, Bob's choice, would you actually have a summit or would you have a war? But forget deeds. What matters is adulation received from an emotional display before a packed sea of millionaire lemmings. So who cares that Trump meets with North Korea? It's no meet the parents.
Gutfeld didn't scream or throw punches. He just pointed out the one truth everyone was quietly thinking but too polite to say out loud. Isn't it strange that a man who spent his entire life pretending to be other people on screen now thinks he's the moral compass for how real people should live? That's not just ironic, it's awkwardly hilarious, like showing up to a black-tie charity dinner wearing flip-flops and a megaphone. What really sold the moment was the contrast between the two. De Niro delivered his angry monologues with the over-the-top emotion of a soap opera character discovering their long-lost evil twin, while Gutfeld calmly dropped truth bombs with the same dry sarcasm you'd use while writing a savage one-star Yelp review. As De Niro puffed up his chest like an outraged rooster who just discovered Twitter, Gutfeld laid down the real issue. How does a guy who hasn't seen the inside of a Walmart since the 90s suddenly claim to speak for everyday Americans? The math simply doesn't math. And then came the most brutal point of all. Gutfeld exposed De Niro's biggest downfall: irrelevance. Not because he's older, not because he's past his prime, but because he made the classic Hollywood mistake, confusing being famous with being right. And in this town, that's not just embarrassing, it's terminal.
Clearly has thought about this, more so than his career. His choice of roles is now down to cinnamon and lobster. He was then asked about the Trump kids. At least he doesn't want my kids to take this the wrong way.
I don't want my kids to take this the wrong way, but if my kids did what these kids did, I wouldn't want to be related to them. I would.
Gutfeld, in his signature deadpan style, simply held up a mirror, and De Niro saw his true reflection in it. And he didn't like what he saw. Instead of seeing himself as a gritty, streetwise rebel like Travis Bickle or a commanding figure like Vito Corleone, the image staring back was that of an out-of-touch millionaire flipping off regular people from the safety of a gated community. The irony? Gutfeld didn't even have to work hard for this takedown. De Niro handed him the material effortlessly, wrapped in self-righteous anger and dramatic pauses, as if begging to be parroted. The whole thing felt less like a debate and more like a one-sided comedy show, where De Niro unknowingly became the punchline. Gutfeld entertained the audience with sharp, controlled wit, while De Niro merely performed the role he was unknowingly cast in. The truly brutal part: the audience understood the difference. When Gutfeld calmly brought up facts and exposed the contradictions in De Niro's outrage, things only got more uncomfortable. He didn't need to raise his voice. His sarcasm was like a slow, precise blade, cutting deeper with every word. He mocked the absurd idea of treating celebrities as moral compasses, pointing out the hypocrisy of a man who spends weekends in luxury cars while ranting about injustice from behind the tinted windows of an overpriced SUV.
What a sad end for a great actor. He went from Raging Bull to this. You know, De Niro kind of represents Hollywood in the sense that they realize that they're losing influence with the public, and that's what's generating the emotional response. They've never felt less important.
And the crowd? They weren't scared. They were bursting with laughter. Because Gutfeld said out loud what everyone else had been quietly thinking but didn't dare to voice. The so-called kings of Hollywood often parade around in outfits that are absurdly expensive, painfully loud, and yet completely see-through, both literally and metaphorically. The comedy practically wrote itself. This was the same De Niro who probably hasn't stepped foot on public transport since the Reagan era, yet here he was delivering passionate monologues about the struggles of the working class. On the other hand, Gutfeld, someone who's probably fought with a vending machine more than once, spoke in a way that actually resonated with people who have to check every item on their grocery bills. De Niro's idea of rebellion was to scowl into the camera, while Gutfeld's rebellion was pointing out that De Niro's anger was wildly misdirected. The most brilliant part was how effortlessly Gutfeld roasted the entire situation, as if it were just another routine gig. Not mean, not aggressive, just perfectly dry and robotic, like casually peeling a banana only to discover a microphone inside, ready for yet another dramatic rant. De Niro may have aimed to come off as serious and intense, but the outcome was an unintentional masterclass in self-parody. His Hollywood-sized ego became the punchline, and Gutfeld didn't even need to land a knockout punch. De Niro's own words did it for him, exposing that his understanding of politics was no deeper than a high school debate team running purely on espresso.
Let's go to, I think he was in Canada, Toronto, opening a restaurant or doing something, and this is what he had to say.
And I just want to make a note of apology for the idiotic behavior of my president. It's a disgrace. And I apologize to Justin Trudeau, and the other people at the G7. It's disgusting.
You know, I actually feel bad for him because I think he's one of those people that has never emotionally recovered from 2016. This is a guy who's got serious Trump.
Let's talk about that epic moment when the gangster on screen got verbally roasted by the smallest guy at the table with the biggest mic. Gutfeld didn't brag. He just laughed because when the truth's this ridiculous, mocking is a public service. While De Niro's rants still get cheers at coastal cocktail parties, Gutfeld's burns hit home where people worry more about inflation than star-studded tantrums. Watching an A-lister get fact-checked by a comedy politics pro was oddly satisfying. Gutfeld didn't stoop low. He stayed calm and steady. The real shame? None of this was new. Everyone was just waiting for someone to say it. The De Niro glow faded long ago, and Gutfeld slapped a past due sticker on it. He turned De Niro's act into a show, Hollywood pretending it still speaks for the country. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. It's just an old clock ticking in a dusty piano.
I find that he's smartest when they drop his audio. But, you know, it's kind of sad because you can see, like, people who are stuck in some kind of, I don't know, derangement, they can't see it themselves. And they're not surrounded by people telling them that they have a problem. And they lack self-awareness because everybody either tells them they're wonderful or wants to sell them cocaine. So he has no clue what he's doing, and he's upset over the emotional nature. His anger is emotional about Trump. It's nothing.
The tables turned fast. The actor was just an actor again, and the crowd? Not in a theater. They were real people laughing at a wannabe philosopher king whose last big role ended years ago. After the showdown, De Niro slipped into the usual Star Age fog, while Gutfeld soaked up the spotlight from a takedown so smooth it left no bruises, just a sharp sting of reality. De Niro's career didn't crash. It quietly fizzled out like bad wine poured into a red Solo cup, loud, messy, and regrettable. Gutfeld didn't even need to sweat it. No shouting, no personal attacks, just a raised eyebrow and a calm expose of a fading dream unraveling like a moth-eaten Broadway script. It wasn't a knockout, more like a gentle buddy, are you okay? The crowd didn't boo, they just squinted, tilted their heads, and wondered if the man had entered his grumpy grandpa outside MoMA phase.
The most boring interview. He used to sell his movies on Leno and Letterman, and it was like watching a WNBA game. You just were just bored to death. All of a sudden, Trump became president, and he started saying things. I want to punch the president in the face. You know, he's a crooked piece of... And then all of a sudden, De Niro became interesting during his media tours. And that's the only way now he can get publicity for his film, is by cursing and...
Here's the real kicker. De Niro didn't fade because of age or time. He's slipping away because he's stuck in a dusty museum version of himself, a relic from when Blockbuster was king. While he imagines being the voice of America, most just want him back in movies, not yelling like a retired drill sergeant stuck in a bad sketch. Gutfeld didn't drag him down. He simply held up a mirror so Dyro could see the truth, a once great actor reduced to an angry uncle nobody asked for. The self-destruction was almost poetic, like watching an old player struggle to use Spotify. Dyro kept fighting shadows while Gutfeld calmly sipped coffee, thinking, "So this is the great Robert Dyro?" The shame wasn't in the mockery, but in not realizing he'd already become the punchline. Legacy is earned, relevance is maintained. Dyro had both, then lost them to angry rants and failed public moments. Gutfeld didn't steal the show. He just pulled back the curtain to reveal the loud but empty tale. The crowd wants sharp wit, not tired rants. Gutfeld gave it with quiet jabs and perfect timing, like gently washing away a sandcastle. Dyro tried Shakespeare at a comedy show. Gutfeld served a pie to the face. And the real tragedy? The mockery made more sense than the speech. If Gutfeld ever quits late night, a masterclass in roasting famous egos awaits.